In a shocking turn of events that has gripped the entertainment world, legendary rapper and actor Ice-T, aged 67, was rushed to the hospital 1 week ago, amid prayers from fans and peers alike. Initial reports were vague, leaving the public in suspense about his condition. However, recent documents obtained by TMZ from the hospital have shed light on the severity of his health battle. Contrary to early rumors of his passing, Ice-T is currently undergoing intensive treatment for septic shock stemming from underlying liver conditions, decompensated alcoholic cirrhosis, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, related cirrhosis. Additionally, investigators suspect he may be suffering from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, a rare and devastating neurological disorder. Septic shock represents the most immediate and life-threatening aspect of Ice-T's reported crisis. This condition is the severe endpoint of sepsis, where an overwhelming infection triggers a cascade of systemic inflammation, leading to dangerously low blood pressure, vasodilation, and multi-organ failure. In Ice-T's case, the multifaceted Ice-T's kills, the septic shock is attributed to complications from his liver diseases, exacerbating the infection's spread. Symptoms typically escalate rapidly: high fever, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, confusion, and extreme fatigue. For someone of Ice-T's age, these can mimic other conditions, delaying diagnosis and worsening outcomes. Challenges abound. Antibiotic resistance is a growing issue, and in patients with liver impairment like Ice-T, drug metabolism is altered, risking toxicity. Moreover, recovery is prolonged. Survivors often face post-sepsis syndrome, including chronic fatigue and cognitive issues. For Ice-T, whose career spans decades of high-stress touring and acting, these complications could hinder a full return to public life, underscoring the need for holistic post-acute care, including nutrition and physical therapy. Underlying the septic shock are Ice-T's dual liver conditions: decompensated cirrhosis from alcohol and NAFLD-related cirrhosis. Alcoholic cirrhosis develops from prolonged heavy drinking, where ethanol toxicity inflames the liver, leading to scarring, fibrosis, that progresses to cirrhosis. Decompensation occurs when the liver can no longer compensate, manifesting in ascites, fluid buildup in the abdomen, jaundice, variceal bleeding, and hepatic encephalopathy, brain fog, from toxin buildup. Ice-T's history in the rap scene, often glamorizing party lifestyles, might contribute, though personal details remain private. Symptoms include fatigue, weight loss, bruising, and swelling, which can precipitate infections like the one causing his shock. Ice-T's multifaceted health ordeal highlights broader issues in geriatric medicine: polypharmacy, infection vulnerability and cirrhosis, and the rarity of CJD complicating diagnostics. His ongoing intensive care involves multidisciplinary teams: hepatologists, infectious disease specialists, neurologists, focusing on stabilizing shock while probing CJD. Public figures like him raise awareness: alcohol moderation, metabolic health maintenance, and early screenings can prevent such escalations. As fans await updates, Ice-T's resilience, forged in hip-hop's gritty origins, may yet inspire recovery. This isn't the first time this 67-year-old icon has faced brutal adversity. If you're ready to uncover one of the most painful, untold stories in entertainment, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. Now, let's look back at Ice-T's difficult journey. From the violence, and loss of his early life to the relentless struggles that shaped him into a hip-hop pioneer and television legend. Tracy Lauren Merrow was born on February 16, 1958 in Newark, New Jersey, to Solomon and Alice Merrow. His father was a skilled mechanic at the Rapistan Conveyor Company in Mountainside, fixing conveyor belts and bringing home a steady paycheck. His mother, Alice, came from Louisiana Creole heritage, with a mix of French, African, and Native American ancestry. She was fair-skinned enough to pass for white, which gave her a unique perspective on racism in America. The family lived in Summit, an upscale, predominantly white town in northern New Jersey. For young Tracy, life was as close to perfect as it could be. There wasn't any violence or trauma, Ice-T would later write in his memoir, Ice, a memoir of gangster life and redemption. It was quiet, simple, and suburban, an almost perfect childhood. Almost perfect, because every few years, Tracy would lose a parent. His mother, Alice, understood racism from both sides. When she went out into the world, white people would speak freely in front of her, assuming she was one of them. She heard the way they talked about black people when they thought no black people were listening, and she made sure her son understood the reality of the world he lived in. Tracy was about 7 years old when he first understood he was black. He had a white friend named Alex from Brayton Elementary School. They played together, laughed together, existed in that innocent childhood space where race doesn't matter yet, until one day when it suddenly did. The details of that moment are lost to time, but the realization stayed with Tracy forever. The world saw him differently than he saw himself, and that difference would matter. But the racial awakening, as painful as it was, couldn't compare to what came next. In January 1967, when Tracy was in 3rd grade, his mother, Alice, died suddenly from a massive heart attack. She was only in her early 30s. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. No warning, no goodbyes, just absence where love used to be. Tracy was 9 years old. The funeral came. The adults dressed in black. Flowers were arranged. People cried and sniffled and kept asking young Tracy, "Are you okay?" They expected him to break down. They expected tears, screaming, the kind of grief that children show when they lose their mothers. But Tracy didn't cry, not one tear. It was almost like I had the ability to will myself into this zone where it really didn't seem to be happening to me, Ice-T recalled decades later. I was emotionally about 1,000,000 miles away from all the adults, all the crying and the handkerchiefs. People thought he was in shock, that he'd process it later. But the truth was simpler and more heartbreaking. Looking back on my childhood, I don't think there was an attachment. That's the kind of statement that should make you pause. A 9-year-old boy losing his mother and feeling nothing. Not because he was cold or unfeeling, but because something in him had already learned to detach, to survive by not feeling. Solomon Marrow, Tracy's father, tried his best to raise his son alone. He hired a housekeeper to help. He kept working at the conveyor company, putting in his hours, bringing home his paycheck. He was a quiet man, a blue-collar worker who didn't talk much but showed up every day. His friends were all white working-class guys, lunch bucket types who judged a man by his work, not his skin color. But Solomon couldn't give his son what the boy needed most: emotional connection. He could provide food, shelter, discipline. But love? The kind of love that makes a child feel safe and valued? That was beyond him. Maybe he was grieving too much himself. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he was raised by a father who didn't show emotion either, and that's all he knew. For 4 years, Tracy and his father existed together in that house. Father and son, but not really connected, not really close. And then, in 1971, Solomon Marrow died. Heart attack. The exact same cause that took Alice. He was 61 years old. Tracy was 13. When your father dies when you're 13, in 7th grade, still trying to figure out who you are and what the world means, something breaks inside you that never quite heals. An aunt who lived nearby came to Tracy's house and told him the news. "Your father is dead. You're alone now. Figure it out." And once again, Tracy didn't cry. Not a single tear. "I didn't have an ounce of self-pity," Ice-T would later say. That's not strength. That's survival mode. That's a child who has learned that emotions are dangerous, that crying doesn't bring anyone back, that the only thing that matters is figuring out how to keep breathing. Both his parents died in their 30s, leaving their only child orphaned. Relatives tried to console him, but Tracy was already somewhere else mentally. His survival instinct had kicked in. He wasn't thinking about grief or loss. He was thinking about what came next. "I had one thought in my mind," Ice-T recalled. "How am I going to make it?" Tracy was briefly placed with a relative in New Jersey, but the arrangement didn't work. Nobody in New Jersey was really equipped or willing to raise a teenage boy who just lost both parents. So Tracy was shipped across the country to Los Angeles to live with an aunt and her husband in View Park, Windsor Hills, an upper-middle-class black neighborhood in south-central Los Angeles. 3,000 miles from everything he'd ever known. Sent to live with relatives who saw him as a burden. A 13-year-old orphan trying to figure out how to survive in a completely new world. "Welcome to LA," Ice-T said years later. "Hey, guess what? We've got gangs. Something I wasn't dealing with in New Jersey and New York." For a while, Tracy managed to stay neutral. He was bused to school in upper-class Culver City, far from the gang warfare that plagued South Central. But he and some friends decided they'd rather attend Crenshaw High School, closer to home. The only problem, Crenshaw was a notorious Crip school. The Crips, one of the largest and most violent street gangs in America, controlled that territory, and they took their gang affiliation very seriously. You were either with them, against them, or you were prey. Tracy and his friends weren't down with any particular gang set. They came from a different neighborhood. They didn't have the protection of gang membership, and at Crenshaw, that made them targets. So Tracy did what any smart kid would do in that situation. He lied. "There were like 3 or 4 of us who came from that group and went to Crenshaw," Ice-T recalled. "We actually created a fake gang. We told people we were part of the Hillside Crips." The Hillside Crips didn't really exist, but it sounded real enough. And because Tracy and his friends carried themselves with confidence, because they stuck together and backed each other up, people believed them. It was a brilliant survival strategy, but it was also the beginning of Tracy's education in street life. He saw how gangs operated, how they controlled territory, how they made money, how they took care of their own while destroying anyone who crossed them. The Crips weren't just a gang. For many young black men in South Central Los Angeles in the 1970s, they were family. They were the only structure, the only protection, the only sense of belonging in a world that had abandoned them. Tracy didn't officially join the Crips, but he moved in their world. He learned their rules. And he understood that in South Central, you either learned to hustle or you starved. After graduating from Crenshaw High School, Tracy fell fully into street life. He stole car stereos. He robbed jewelry stores. He dealt drugs. He lived the life that his music would later make famous, the life of a hustler trying to survive in South Central Los Angeles. During his senior year of high school, Tracy got his girlfriend pregnant. At 17, 18 years old, he was about to become a father. His daughter, Letitia, was born on March 20th, 1976, another mouth to feed, another reason to hustle harder. But Tracy could see where this path led: prison or death. Those were the only 2 outcomes for young black men in the street life. He'd seen it happen to people he knew. Friends murdered over territory disputes, others locked up for decades. The game always ended the same way. So in 1977, Tracy enlisted in the United States Army, not out of patriotism, not to serve his country, but because it was the only legal way to escape the negative path he was on and still support his child. He joined the 25th Infantry Division and was stationed at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. For 4 years, Tracy served as a squad leader. The Army taught him discipline, structure, survival skills. Overcome, adapt, improvise. The military drilled into him. Hustlers don't complain, they figure it out. Those lessons would serve him for the rest of his life. While in the army, Tracy discovered he had a gift for writing rhymes. His buddies would gather around, and he'd recite passages from novels by Iceberg Slim, the pimp-turned-writer whose books chronicled the dark underbelly of street life. Tracy could memorize entire passages and deliver them with perfect cadence and timing. His friends started calling him Ice after Iceberg Slim. And because his buddies called him T for Tracy, the name evolved. Kick some more of that iced tea. Ice-T. The name stuck. In 1981, Ice-T received an honorable discharge after serving 4 years. He returned to Los Angeles with a military discipline, a daughter to support, and absolutely no legal job prospects. So he went back to what he knew, crime. But this time, he also started rapping. In 1985, a Philadelphia rapper named Schoolie D released a single called PSK. What does it mean? The track featured tough street talk and a rap style that was completely different from the party rap that dominated the genre. Schoolie D rapped about street life, about gang culture, about the reality of violence and crime. Ice-T heard that track and saw an opportunity. Call it a bite or what you will, Ice-T said later, but I dug that record. In 1986, Ice-T recorded 6 in the Mornin', a track that told vivid stories about life in South Central Los Angeles. It was raw, it was violent, it was honest, and it was unlike anything hip-hop had heard before. 6 in the Mornin' appeared on Ice-T's 1987 debut album, Rhyme Pays, which became the first rap album to ever carry a parental advisory sticker. That sticker, meant as a warning, became a badge of honor. Kids wanted to hear what was so dangerous that adults needed to be warned. Ice-T had accidentally become the godfather of gangsta rap. Actor Dennis Hopper heard 6 in the Mornin' and asked Ice-T to provide the title track for his 1988 gang film, Colors. The song became a hit, further cementing Ice-T's status as the voice of street life. But Ice-T wasn't just making music. He was documenting a reality that mainstream America refused to acknowledge: the poverty, the violence, the police brutality, the way young black men were hunted in their own neighborhoods. "Rap saved my life," Ice-T told NPR in 2012. "I made the documentary Something from Nothing, The Art of Rap, because rap saved my life." Music gave Ice-T a way out of crime, but it also put him in the crosshairs of America's culture war. In the mid-1980s, the Parents Music Resource Center declared war on music with explicit lyrics. Initially targeting Madonna and Prince, they soon found a bigger target: gangsta rap. And Ice-T, never one to mince words, had plenty to say about censorship. On the title track of his 1989 album, The Iceberg Freedom of Speech, Just Watch What You Say, Ice-T leveled the PMRC and defended the First Amendment. He pointed out the hypocrisy of supposed defenders of free speech trying to suppress art they didn't like. But the real controversy came in 1992, when Ice-T released the debut album by his heavy metal band, Body Count. The album included a track called Cop Killer. The song was a rage-filled response to police brutality, told from the perspective of someone who'd been pushed too far. It wasn't advocating violence. It was expressing the anger that many people felt but couldn't articulate. America lost its mind. Police organizations boycotted. Politicians condemned it. President George H.W. Bush spoke out against it. Retailers received threats. The pressure on Warner Brothers Records became unbearable. Anybody that thinks controversy is a way to make money, it's not, Ice-T said in a 2024 interview. You need lawyers. While it created buzz, the associated costs outweighed any promotional benefits. Eventually, Warner Brothers dropped Ice-T from the label. The Cop Killer track was removed from future pressings of the album. Ice-T had won the battle for artistic freedom, but lost the war against corporate pressure. Yet the controversy did something important. It proved that Ice-T was willing to speak truth, regardless of the consequences. He'd grown up with nothing. He'd survived being an orphan, street life, and the army. He wasn't going to be silenced by politicians or corporations. Throughout all the chaos of his music career, Ice-T struggled with relationships. He had his daughter, Letitia, with his high school girlfriend, Adrienne. In 1991, he had a son, Tracy Jr., a cow with former girlfriend, Darlene Ortiz. But Ice-T's real transformation came when he met Nicole, Coco Austin. They married on January 1st, 2002 in Las Vegas. Coco, a model and actress with her own career and identity, became Ice-T's anchor. "I've been in love before," Ice-T said, "but this is different. This is real." On November 28, 2015, they welcomed daughter Chanel Nicole Marrow. Ice-T was 57 years old, and for the first time, he was present for a child's birth and early years. With Letitia and Tracy Jr., he'd been hustling, surviving, building a career. But with Chanel, he could be present. He could be the father he never had. "I have credited my family with providing stability," Ice-T has said, contrasting my own early loss of parents and highlighting the enduring nature of my marriage to Austin, now over 2 decades long. But even with love and stability, Ice-T admits he still carries the trauma of his childhood. "I've been on my own ever since I was 17 years old," he told Closer Weekly in 2023. He's learned to cope by ripping the rearview mirror off his life, looking forward instead of dwelling on the past. But that coping mechanism comes with a cost. Ice-T admits he can't remember much about his mother. His memories of his father are mostly about discipline, not affection. "With all due respect, I think it's better for me that it happened so early," Ice-T has said about losing his parents, "because I was able to deal with it early. As a kid, a lot of times you don't register things. But is it better? Or is it just the only way to survive?" In 2000, Ice-T got a call that would change his life again. Dick Wolf, creator of Law & Order, wanted him to audition for a role on Law & Order's Special Victims Unit. The role was Detective Odafin Tutuola, a tough street cop with a complicated past. Ice-T, the man who recorded Cop Killer, was being asked to play a cop. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but Ice-T saw the opportunity. Acting had always been part of his career, going back to his film debut in Breakin' in 1984. He'd appeared in New Jack City, Ricochet, Trespass, and other films. He was good at it. For the last 24 years, Ice-T has played Detective Tutuola on SVU, making him one of the longest-running actors on a police drama in television history. The show has given him financial security, mainstream respectability, and a new audience that knows him as that cop from SVU rather than that rapper who made Cop Killer. But the contradiction remains. Ice-T, who grew up being harassed by police, who witnessed brutal police violence in his neighborhood, who wrote songs about fighting back against corrupt cops, now plays a cop 5 days a week. "I never really questioned my artistic choices at the time," Ice-T said in 2024, reflecting on Cop Killer. "I viewed it as an authentic expression amid police brutality debates, though I now frame it within broader lessons on artistic intent versus public fallout." Playing Detective Tutuola has taught Ice-T nuance. There are good cops and bad cops, just like there are good civilians and bad civilians. But the trauma of his youth, the reality of police brutality in Black communities, that never goes away. Today, Ice-T is 67 years old. He has a net worth estimated in the tens of millions. He has a loving wife, 3 children, and grandchildren. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of Public Enemy's extended influence on hip-hop culture. He's respected as both a rapper and an actor, but he still carries that 9-year-old boy whose mother died without warning, that 13-year-old orphan who learned to survive by not feeling, that teenager who had to create a fake gang identity just to make it through high school, that young man who robbed jewelry stores because he didn't see any other option. "I've always felt safe and protected on set," Ice-T has said, contrasting his adult life with his childhood. But safety isn't the same as healing. Protection isn't the same as peace. In recent years, Ice-T has become an advocate for mental health awareness, especially for young performers navigating the entertainment industry. He's spoken about the need for proper support systems, for adults who prioritize children's well-being over profits. He's also cautioned about modern rap beefs. "Modern rap beefs are not smart and prone to dangerous escalations," he said in a November 2024 interview. He's seen too many young rappers die over feuds that started as entertainment and ended in violence. Ice-T survived. Against all odds, against every statistic, against every expectation, for a black orphan from South Central Los Angeles, he survived. He built a career. He found love. He became a father who shows his children affection and presence. But survival isn't the same as thriving, and success doesn't erase trauma. Ice-T's story is often told as an inspiration, from orphan to superstar, from street hustler to respected actor, from poverty to wealth. It's the American dream, hip-hop edition. But the real story is darker and more complicated. It's a story about what happens when a child loses everything and has to rebuild himself from nothing. It's about the cost of survival, the price of success, and the trauma that never quite heals. Ice-T didn't choose to be an orphan at 13. He didn't choose to be raised in one of the most violent neighborhoods in America. He didn't choose to be surrounded by gangs and crime and violence. He didn't choose any of it. What he chose was to survive, to fight, to refuse to be just another statistic. And in surviving, he created art that spoke for millions of people who felt the same rage, the same pain, the same desperate need to be heard. "When I dropped out of high school, my plan was to get my trucking license, just like my father," Ice-T once said. But his father never got to see him become something more than a truck driver. Never got to see him become Ice-T, the godfather of gangsta rap, the actor, the cultural icon. At 67 years old, Ice-T has lived more than twice as long as both his parents combined. He's outlived them, outgrown them, become more than they could have imagined. But late at night, when the cameras stop rolling and the crowds go home, does he still feel like that 13-year-old orphan? Does he still carry that survival instinct, that inability to cry, that detachment that saved him but cost him so much? Ice-T has never pretended to be perfect. He's been honest about his crimes, his failures, his struggles. That honesty is what made his music powerful and what makes his survival story meaningful. He didn't just survive, he documented it. He turned trauma into art. He gave voice to the voiceless. And maybe that's the real legacy. Not the wealth or the fame, but the truth he told about what it costs to survive when the world doesn't care if you live or die. Ice-T is still here, still working, still creating, still fighting. And that, perhaps, is the greatest triumph of all.